morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid, a channel I'm creating not just to build the awareness and the understanding around the reality of living with complex trauma, but I'm also wanting to get into what I've learned over many, many years of being around this stuff. Ways of understanding in the real world context of how to support and find the resources you need and create the ecologies you need to heal. Now, in this video, I know I'm actually going to create a bit of a series of videos around a question that I've been asked so often over decades of being around the areas of trauma and complex trauma. And that is, so what does healing actually look like? How do we do it? What needs to happen? And when you look in the context of early childhood, pre-verbal, or complex multiple type, multiple event, the non-singular event types of trauma, this is not an easy question to answer because there's so many layers and processes going on that I guess for the first understanding that is needed, and that's one of the reasons of this first video, is in the world today, mental health terminology, everything that is used to refer to it, guides the generalized understanding that it's all in here. It's all cognitive, it's all in our brain. And yes, you can alter cognitive behavioral patterns. There are multitudes of therapies that work with this, and yes, they're all peer reviewed in their little sections and so forth and so forth. But if this is the case, and I'm being honest here with my own personal experience, as well as decades of talking with people and having people come up and talk with me and going, well, why didn't it work for me? And I asked them, so what do you think was needed? What was missed? What didn't they get? What is your viewpoint? And over decades, it's helped to formulate my interpretation of what I believe is going on and why I'm making this channel. And also many decades of doing advocacy work and trying to get government to recognize certain things, especially around the way children are removed and placed. And through that understanding, so much, the majority of the trauma experience, especially when you're dealing with pre-verbal early childhood and complex multiple type, is not cognitive. It is all in our body. And that is one of the biggest understandings needed, because globally in society there is this misconception that it's all mental health. If you can change the way you think, you can change the way trauma affects you. And in my humble belief, that just simply isn't true. And I'm yet to see it play out that way. In the beginning, sure, people go to therapy. They have a positive interactions and positive responses because then it's another person there listening to them. The majority of the felt sense changes comes from I have a person that is paying attention to me and is there solely to help me. That is where the felt sense comes from, because the reality of healing trauma, and that's why it's going to take a series of videos to explain. So please don't jump to conclusions just on this first one. There's a whole ecology. We are an ecology living within ecologies, and all of it needs to change incrementally at each step. Another key component when answering the question of, so how do we heal from trauma, is that understanding. In our society, we have the capacity, if we're able to afford and go to therapy, a form of therapy, we can focus on one part. But in healing trauma, we need to focus on all parts simultaneously. As I've said in a couple of videos, and it's been referred to by Bessel van der Kolk, is healing, the understanding what complex trauma is like trying to herd 50 feral cats in one direction. And that's literally what we're trying to understand, and what I'm trying to explain and do in these videos is we need to work on all the different parts one little step at a time, not leap ahead with just one component. Say if you're doing, CBD, cognitive behavioral therapy, you're altering how you perceive things cognitively. You can make all these leaps ahead, and one little felt sense response will unravel it. And that's what I get from all the years of talking with people. And they ask, why didn't it work for me? And the reasons why is we need to work incrementally on all the different facets. And the majority of the facets are not cognitive. They're not word-based. They're how our body responds. They're our nervous system, our immune system, our entire cellular response structures around how we interpret our environment and respond to our environment. It comes down to epigenetics. It comes down to so many different factors. And the take-home message from that is the biggest thing we need to change is the environment that we are constantly in to match the changes that we're doing. Because that's what all the parts of us are assessing. We can change our mind easily. You can do affirmations, you can repeat sentences over and over and over again. You can do actions to cognitively change your behavior, short term. But we need to influence our environment for trauma to actually begin to heal, for our body to actually begin to work with that. And the first step of that is understanding that we're safe, how our body works with being safe. And then once we work from that, we need to get our body into a place where it will agree to allow change. That's why I've constantly said through the majority of my videos that if you want to heal trauma, you've got to focus on attachment trauma first. How we connect, how we interpret being part of. All of that provides that basis of safe. And I'm only going to touch on these points in these first few videos, but I will do a series of stepping each point out one at a time. So as I said, if we can start to work on that sense of safe and how we interpret our environment, we start to become aware that we are dealing with an environment. We are an ecology living within an ecology that's part of other ecologies. Every little interaction we do sends a ripple out and alters the ecologies around. They respond, those ripples come back and challenge the changes that we make. And it creates this process that, because trauma creates this black and white, definitive, yes or no, on or off kind of way of viewing things, it causes a lot of issues. So hence the understandings that I hope to project through these videos of, if we heal attachment, we understand that there is gray areas within the attachment process. If we could teach our nervous system that way, then we are a little less reactive and more open to receive. If we can do these processes, we can understand the support that we have and how that plays in with the ecology that is us and what we're trying to do. And we can step that out little by little by little, working in all the different facets of the responses that need to be changed as a part of healing. Our nervous system, the way we interpret things, the physical felt sense sensations, the constant hypervigilance and being on edge and anxiety and all this threat response stuff, this defensive response stuff. Our endocrine system that supports the higher levels of stress. All the vagal responses that are all, and the vocal tone, and all these components that are all part of how our body perceives and interacts with an environment it considers hostile. Our digestive response to support our body dealing with the toxins created from this heightened state, but also how to promote supporting the autonomic systems to go, we are not under actual threat. There's all these layers. And then we've got all the epigenetics of what we've inherited, these predispositions that we need to understand so we don't step in the minefields that's been passed on to us generationally. There is a lot to get our head around if we really want to heal trauma. And that's the challenging part. Now, I know this video is a little all over the place, and that's because I'm trying to herd 50 feral cats in one direction in a way that is real world. I can always spout off a whole bunch of technical jargon, which means nothing to those of us that live it. It's just words. But in the real world sense, the key to healing trauma is understanding we need to change the environment we are in and how our body, our complete neurophysiological self interprets that environment. Cognitively plays a small part, about 5% of that healing process. It comes down to actually and repeatedly experiencing physical change. The more we can experience actual physical change that is positive, the more our nervous system will learn that the environment has changed, therefore I can change how I interpret it. And that's basically how we work with trauma. We need to get our body to interpret the environment differently. And the only way we can do that is by altering the environment that we are predominantly in. As I said, I'm doing this new series of videos, and I will step this out as I go along and try to keep it as real world and as simple as possible. But I love you guys' comments and feedback. And if you have ideas, please either email me on aboxwithnolid@gmail.com or message in the comments, either way. I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, please be respectful, and I'll see you all next time.